Hey, it's Kevin with the New Warehouse Podcast, bringing you a new episode today. And on today's episode, I am going to be joined by Tim Regnier, and he is the CEO and founder at Smart Access. And Smart Access, we're going to learn all about that today, but they are applying technology to those good old SOPs. Which I love a good SOP myself. So I'm very excited to learn more about this and how they're helping operations to improve as well. So we're going to dive into all of that. So Tim, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am good. Thanks so much for having me. I've been listening to the podcast for a long time. It's incredible how many
Oh,
episodes you've done. I think it's like 600 something. That's amazing.
yes, yeah. I can't believe it myself. It's pretty wild, but I appreciate you listening for a long
Yeah.
time. That
Yeah.
means a lot, definitely. So a long time listener, first time guest. So we're happy to get him on here, definitely.
Yeah.
So Tim, tell us a little bit about you and what Smart Access is and how you ended up starting this company.
Yeah. Well, I'm originally from Edmonton, Canada. Grew up just outside of that city and um yeah, just started we started building retail technology as contractors for big retailers, and it's kind of a long story how we got there, but from there we started spending more time with big operators, and they
Mm,
kept saying to us the most important thing is our people, and how do we get the most of our people, how do we help them be successful and all that. And so we just saw a lot of opportunity to support that effort. And we were hanging out with a big retailer, and they said, "Hey, you should talk to our distribution people. Maybe you can help." And so we
mm.
we started spending time with them and realized, wow, this is in a lot of ways a forgotten corner of the world, but it's such a vital part of the operation. And so started trying to be helpful to that organization, and a product sort of popped out of that over time.
Hmm. Interesting. And so I guess tell us a little bit about the product. Like what is Smart Access?
Yeah. So Smart Access is at its heart is all about SOP execution. And
Mm,
so what we learned as we spent time with this one retailer, and now we spend it with many others, is the burden of execution is on those fine folks that work inside of the warehouse, the distribution center. There's all
mhm,
these tools and technology, ways that you know they're trying to get the work done, but the burden actually lands on the shoulders of the people that have to do the work, and sometimes that's forgotten. And so we started from the thinking of the from the bottom, like what's happening on the floor, what are these people missing, what information do they need to do the job correctly. And that kind of led us to delivering something around the standards, which branches out into many other things. But if you can get the SOPs right, um, then at least you're starting from a place where people are at least going in the same direction. And so the product is SOP execution and what that means. And
mm.
SOP execution touches a lot of things, right? It touches
Yeah.
the folks on the floor, continuous improvement, labor planning, different things. It's all about hey, we set out to hit this volume at this building consistently. Can we do it with the group of people we have in place? And so that was the tension that we noticed, and the opportunity to maybe support the market there.
Hmm. Very interesting. And so tell us, because you mentioned this kind of came about as you kind of get introduced to this distribution arm of this company you're doing some work with, and tell us a little bit what stood out to you about the SOP itself that was like that sticking point of, hey, we need to build something around this.
Yeah, I think the thing about um, standards is that they get written, they're put in a binder or a
Mm-hmm.
SharePoint, and then they become dead documents. The moment you press save or publish or whatever, they're dead documents. And so what you notice on the floor, and kind of the original insight, is that the people on the floor see the world very different than the leadership, right? Like, because they actually have
Mm-hmm.
to execute. And so the thing that always bothered me is if you talk to someone working on a floor, is they'd be like, well, if management understood X, Y, and Z, we would do it this way. And then management would say,
Yeah.
if the floor understood X, Y, and Z, they would do. And I'm like, well, what's the disconnect? And it really was that they're not actually talking about the same thing, or they don't understand why we do certain things. And that goes both directions, both from the floor up into management or management down to the floor. And so um, that was sort of the major aha. We're like, oh, like this is not communication, but like these people are there just executing what they think is the right thing. But the
Mm.
distance over time and the drift, that gap starts to grow. Um, if not checked and understood by both sides of the floor. And so that's kind of like what got us going on it and thinking about SOPs is a starting point. And yeah, so does that make sense what I'm saying and where we're kind of landed there?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Because I think, and I've certainly seen that myself, right? Where it's, leadership, high above is like, this needs to be the policy, and, these are what you need to do to do that. And then it gets to the floor, and the floor's like, well, what? Like, we don't do that, or like,
Yeah,
we can't do that because
yeah,
we have to do this, or this contradicts with what we learned like 3 months ago, right? Or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, right? So there's like you said, I mean, there's that disconnect, right? So how do you bring that all together? So I'm curious your thoughts there on, because you mentioned, obviously, like, you develop this SOP,
Yeah.
right? You pass it around, and people are like, yeah, this looks good, yes, yeah. And then you're like, okay, like, we did it, we made the SOP. And like you said, it goes in the binder, goes in the SharePoint or something, and then, like, there's some kind of audit or something down the line, and that's like kind of when it comes out again, right? and
Yeah.
and and shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately, like, that's kind of commonplace for I think a lot of operations and organizations. So what's your view on how do you start to make this into, like, a more actionable process, a proper SOP program,
Hmm.
versus, like you said, just creating a dead document?
Yeah. So then the opposite of something dead is alive. So how do we make an SOP
That's
alive?
true. That's
Right?
true. Yeah.
So um because operation it's a living organism or an ecosystem, and
Sure.
so things are changing all the time. Things are adjusting, and so we thought, well, first of all, we need to get the SOPs in a single place, and then how can we get them to be close to the action? And the action is
Mm.
on the floor. And so what we did is we brought in SOPs into a single place, and we use AI to bring it in. So like our customers, they can just give us whatever they have. Because when we meet customers, we go, tell us what your SOPs, and they like look around, they don't want to talk about it. Like it's like this embarrassing thing. Oh, ours are fine, or we don't want, like they just, there's a real feeling of they're not up to standard. And I'm like, well, of course they're not, because they're like novels that no one, like you just can't update them
Mm.
quickly. So what we do is we bring them in and we allow people to connect and comment, kind of like a Google sheet or something, or a Google document. So
Oh,
like I
okay.
can, through my organization, I can say, hey, this looks like the right way to do this. What about this way? And you allow people to work that way. But then an SOP is nothing without action. And so the rest of our platform really is driving the programs that make sure that we know what good looks like on the floor, and is good being done, and is it being done at scale. Scale is the hardest part of everything. Like there's islands of
Mm.
excellence in all these organizations, and you can see it. You have a great manager driving great execution, but to scale that across all buildings, all shifts, everybody, that's the tricky part. And so we leverage things like observations and skill building and certifications to drive the actions on the floor, bring out the behavior and the feedback loops that come from those sorts of things that are happening on the floor. They feed back into the SOP. So our system allows you to have someone out, let's say, do an observation. They say, well, we don't do this here. Or they can comment, they can make suggestions and say, in our building, we do it this way. In our building, we do it that way. Or um, this doesn't make sense. Or a real example is this SOP is asking us to wear Kevlar gloves when we're opening boxes. I don't
Yeah.
have Kevlar gloves. Like, where are the Kevlar gloves? Right?
Yeah.
So what happens is there's real things happening on the floor, and if that doesn't get fed back, that's where they just become dead documents. They're not up to date. So our system allows you to make those comments, and every single step piece within an SOP, the software is designed so that you can change and know where it's affecting an observation, skill building, or certifications. It can know, and it goes vice versa. Like if you want to change an observation, it's going to tell you, hey, that's different than what it says in the SOP. So it's right in the mix of everything. Um, and that SOP is always being updated and changed. And it's sort of automatic in some ways as the front line is changing and executing. So that's the key thing we think with SOPs to make them alive is they have to be connected to the action that's happening on the floor. And
Mm,
centrally located, everyone can look at them that needs to and contribute and whatnot. So
mm.
that's how we built this SOP software part.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I love that example where it's,
Mhm.
oh, we're supposed to be using Kevlar gloves and we haven't had Kevlar gloves in 6 months, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
so, so when you get that feedback, right? Because because I've run into that before too when I was like training people on the SOPs we had, and they were old, and then you read through them as you're training them, like you're even like, oh wait, we don't do that anymore. So like
yeah,
just disregard that part, right? But then it's a whole other process to update it, and then get like a sign off approval, and then like you got to retrain and all these things. So
yeah.
it's like an extensive process to do that manually. So I'm curious, how does that work through the smart access platform? I mean, how does you get that feedback, right?
Yeah.
And then does that automatically update the SOP, or how does that work from that perspective?
Yeah. So we try to, give the full life cycle of that change. So if your SOP changes, here's a great example. We had a customer that came in, they said, we don't have aisle lines. And so traffic
Mm,
is all over the place. We need to change that. So what they did is they said, okay, first of all, that feedback came from the floor. You should have aisle lines. Here's why. And it was a continuous
yeah.
engineer person in a building. So that comes in and they decide, you know what, you're right. We should make this change. So now they make the change to the SOP. The software has the ability, we call them action plans, and the software could help you roll out aisle lines. So this is what it can go building by building if you want to. It's just basically in some ways a project management for a change like that from the physical side. So we're going to roll out the aisle
Mm,
lines. So you can set that in place. And let's say you have 10 buildings. It's like who's going to do it? Have the tools or the materials been sent to the buildings? When is it done? Is it done yet? Who's doing like the whole thing gets managed from that way. And now we have to tell everybody to pay attention to these aisle lines, or like that these is now part of the SOP. You go on the right, not the left, or whatever you want to do. So then that gets changed in the SOP, and then our system can generate with AI a new observation or a new skill build, so that anybody that comes new into the organization from skill build, if you're ramping up, we're going to start talking to you immediately about aisle lines and what that means because now they're in the building. And then
mm,
observations are going to go out, and the system runs the program of observation. So we think everyone should be observed. We don't think you should just observe your low performers because there's always a way to coach and get people performing
yeah.
better. And so then that observation is now updated. And so our system will help you manage. Let's say you need every 90 days, I want to observe every person in the building. So that it helps you manage that compliance. And guess what? You're going to be going through it and you're going to be talking about aisle lines. So it takes it from the change in the SOP, can roll out the actual change if it's like a physical change or something. It can notify people if it's just a different way of doing something. But then also, like, how do you get that ingrained into the operation? And that's through skill building and observation. So then the system has this tool of driving the behaviors that you want to see on the floor, and those observations can go through. And so I don't know, we've been around for a few years, but we've done like 2 million observations at this point. And so there's
Oh
just
wow.
all these conversations happening. And so it's taking the burden of execution off of the shoulders of that supervisor or frontline leader. As they walk out, they don't need to necessarily know about the change directly, but it's going to prompt them in the software and say, hey, we're now aisle lines. Maybe here's a picture, here's a short video if you want it, to say this is how we um, run our operation with these new aisle lines. So it's kind of full cycle management. So it's one thing to change the SOP, but how do you change your workforce? And that's what Smart Access does, that end to end.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Very interesting. Yeah, yeah, and I love that it's doing those observations and those updates, and I love what you said there about the everybody should be observed, right? Not
yeah,
just the low performers, because there's always something, whether it's improvement or a learning or something that can be gotten there. So now, what does this look like from the like on the floor worker
yeah.
perspective? Like how are they seeing this platform? How are they interacting with it?
We find typically it's through the most potent way, because I think the one thing that we learned early on spending time in distribution centers is this is a business of pace. And I don't mean it in the
Mm,
engineered standard necessarily, but if you don't respect the pace of the floor, you're going to get yourself in trouble. Meaning they have a very specific job to do and function to perform. And in a lot of ways, you don't want to get in their way. Like if you're just unloading trucks, taking it off the truck with a forklift and putting it in the lane, you kind of need to leave them alone, and they just need to, it's almost like learning a golf swing or learning, like it's a procedure
mm,
that's repeated and is done in a sustainable way. And so for us, our software really leverages that supervisor or leader. Now, you if you're a frontline worker, you can access Smart Access and there's information there, but I don't really think that's somewhat valuable. But the
mm.
most valuable part is that that supervisor or leader is engaging with you about your work at a very specific job function level. And so
I
that's how
see.
they're going to experience the frontline. The frontline people will experience it. Um, Most organizations, what they'd like to see is that they're in direct work, right? Like not, and so if you're coaching, supporting to the standards, I think your optimum place to be is, moving boxes or
Mm.
moving volume and whatnot through the building. And so it's leveraged through the supervisors and leaders typically, and ops managers too, to a degree, of course. So
Gotcha. I see. So that feedback from the floor is going to come during like those observations, right? And
yeah,
the platform is going to, and so is the platform like prompting those observations to happen for the warehouse leaders?
that's right. Yeah. So it
I see.
depends on the organization, but some might say, hey, you need to do 5 a week. Some might
Sure.
say, I need you to hit everyone in 90 days. It kind of depends on your organization and how you want to do it. But every observation is job function specific, work area specific. So if you're in non-con inbound, like you're pulling, putting stuff, you're going to have the observation specific one to you, to the job function you're in. All of your history is going to be there. So if a supervisor or leader walks out on the floor, they're going to know everything about that person. Um, Organizations often give us their performance data, so we know how that person's performing. So they know just kind of everything around what that person's doing, so that they can execute um, the job that they're in, or that function for that day. And so um, coaching to that and giving them the tools to just get the job done. And we've seen this many
Mm.
times. You go out on the floor and some guys like hitting 140 of performance standard, and you're like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, you never let the equipment stop before you get off. You're not level picking. Like you're
Yeah.
going fast and you're hitting your number, but like just like, okay, by the end of the day, you're gonna have a strain. Like
Mm.
there's people above and below the line that you want to support, and they all need a different level of support. So if that person doesn't do it properly, maybe you're not the person that observed them 10 days ago, but that information's there, and say, hey, like you're still not level picking. Can we help you figure out how to still hit your number and not put yourself at risk of hurting yourself too? So that there's just
Mm.
like that help along the way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point there is, even though they're like crushing like stat wise. Like that doesn't
Yeah.
always mean it's the best. I mean, certainly I've worked with people like that, and I remember we had one guy, and he was like, I'm gonna pick the most. I'm gonna pick the most, and he would pick the most, right? But then when we started to, and it was like fantastic. We're like, yeah, yeah, this is great, right? And then we start to like filter down and look through the numbers, and like there were so many errors
Yeah.
in the pick, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like well, like slow down, like like because if you pick it and it's wrong, like it's just like you didn't pick it at all, basically,
Yeah. Yeah.
creating more work. So I mean, I think it's very interesting this how this technology is kind of coming into play here, and we've talked kind of about like the coaching and the
Yeah.
observations and things like that. Now, what about like for because inherently in a warehouse environment, there's large turnover, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's because of seasonality or it's just because you're in a competitive warehouse market or area. Uh, how does this help from like a new hire perspective, right? Because I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges is like investing in training, and then this person they
Turned
decided to
out.
leave
Yeah.
5 days later, right, or something. So, how does this help as like a training tool to get them up to speed as well?
Yeah. So there's there's a place for sitting in a back room and clicking through some sort of learning platform where you just kind of get the
Mm,
download of it. And that is like I would say the written part of a driver's license, like I have kids that have just done this. They do the
sure.
written part. Okay, so now I have a sense. Now I have to actually go out and drive, and you have to get the figure out. So we have a module, it's called skill building, and that's really what it is. Like, okay, I know what to do, but now it's about ramping me up, right? Safely at the right pace. And that is like that's usually a transfer of knowledge either from a peer coach or from a trainer. And Smart Access, in the same way, we just prompt and move people through that so that that information about the specifics of the job function is in the platform, and you're working that through with that person. And just having it in a centralized place, totally based on SOP, right? Like it's not there's no deviation, so there's consistency. Um, you're working people through it. And so what we find is people get through, we can cut that ramp time usually in half by just using a system. So most places don't have a great system. It's maybe on a spreadsheet. And the tricky part is, and I've seen this in almost every customer's buildings, they have a spreadsheet and let's say you have 10 people start this week, 10 people start next week, and 10 and 10. You plus play on that, and in 6 months, you have a bunch of people that never really fully got led through a program to
Yeah.
get them through. And so we just think, man, we're gonna do all this work to have great SOPs and drive execution, and we're not gonna have anyone new coming through, not have a full download of how things actually work on the floor. Because how they work on the floor is different, right?
Mm,
And so we have our customers usually tell us how we do it, and then we have AI that can generate it for them just to make that part of like sort of like not a empty page starting problem. But that brings them through, and that's also an easy way to cross skill because we have all the
mm,
HRS data. And if we look out and your labor planner's like, man, we're going to need more people doing this and this at this building because we're going to send all this volume there, you can cross skill them. And so the system does that automatically. It can help you move people around, get them skilled,
okay.
shows you who's skilled, who's not, how far along they are in their new skill if they're learning to do something different across the building or something like that. So just making sure that you're moving everyone consistently through, and we call those action plans. So you start day one, the system's going to say, okay, Kevin, you're going to be learning inbound receiving, and you're going to start here. And we've
Mm,
laid out that flow to get you ramped by this time. And that's going to be going through and helping you get there. Um, and then we're going to move you across the building to outbound. Okay, well, now we assign a new action plan to you, and it's a combination of skill building and observation, maybe certifications on a forklift or a piece of material handling equipment so that you get moved in. And to me, like that's the work of a supervisor and a leader. It's when we meet people, it's in 10 or 15 different places. We're bringing it all into one place, and all the thinking is done by the software, and
mm.
just helping you cross skill, reskill, move people around. Um, I think it's a big part of the work, and the software can do that.
Yeah, yeah. There's certainly there's a huge amount of kind of administrative work there that goes into tracking that training progression and who's been trained on this SOP, who hasn't been, and when are we going to get them trained and things like that. I took on a project like that, trying to get everybody up to speed at one point
Yeah,
in my career, and yeah, and like and some of the SOPs that people had never been trained on were like very simple, but they were like things that like, oh, you should have gotten this like on day one,
well, I did.
right? And
Yeah,
it's like, and they've been with the company like 6 months, right? And
yeah,
you're
yeah,
like, like we definitely missed something here. It's like,
yeah,
but it's how do you, there's so many moving parts at some points. Like you said, like you got 10 people starting this week, and then 10 people starting next week, and maybe I got like 4 temps that are going to be here for 3 weeks starting
yeah,
tomorrow, and they need to know some of the policies as well, even though they're only going to be here for a little bit. How do you keep track of all that? And I love that the program is doing that.
yeah.
So now to get started with smart access,
Mhm.
because it sounded like you could kind of feed it whatever you have if you, and this is certainly the case for some organizations and operations. I mean, if you have no SOPs to begin
Yeah,
with, can you still get
yeah,
smart access, or do you need to have something in place already
yeah.
to for smart access to adopt?
Totally. Some people might just have work instructions, and we take those in.
Sure.
Um, it's kind of whatever format it's in. But part of it is just getting on the path to it, right? Like if you have zero, which
Mm.
most people don't have zero, but it often is out of date, you bring it into the platform and it just breaks it out into a great editable format so that you can dump it in. And if you just get the high level structure, because of the feedback from the floor, and I forgot to
Mm.
mention, we do a lot of the prompts that are in the software, of course, they're customizable. We're asking the associate, what could we do better? How is this? Like you ask the questions from these folks, and that's just all those notes come back in at a high volume, and you're able to look at that, pictures and everything. So you're just getting a ton of feedback from the floor, and you bring that into your SOP, and it starts to just grow into something really great. And it's driven by operational insights. Um, a lot of people that say they're, oh, we're getting a new WMS or we're introducing labor management. Most of our customers that have been in that situation either had the foresight or wish they would have had smart access before they did the implementation. Because now you have a tool to drive the right action. We have the SOPs, you have the new way of doing things with a WMS. And if let's say it's even before that, but you can bring that into the system, and then you're always talking about things from the standard, not from a half-cooked idea, and that it moves that way. We find that people without SOPs were such an easy tool to get you started and get consistency on the floor. Even if you didn't have an SOP and you started with an observation that's specific to a job function, pushing that back into an SOP is pretty easy. We have team members and we do this for our customers. Like if you work with Smart Access and you have nothing, we're going to help you get there and get you stood up.
Mm.
So it's part of the service of the organization. We don't want someone saying, well, just give me 6 months. I'm going to write my SOPs. Then I'll put it in Smart Access. It's kind of a waste
Yeah.
of time because the floor is, you don't know what's happening on the floor.
Yeah.
And it goes both ways, meaning like just because the floor needs to change probably, and so does your SOP.
Mm.
And so that's what we find with people without SOPs is we kind of love working with those organizations that are, or it's like really out of
Mm.
date because we can
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
them absolutely being consistent right away.
Really interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. We
Yeah.
see productivity increase 7 to 10% within the first 90 days. Because
Oh
if you,
wow.
and it's a big deal, and it's pretty simple if you think about it. If you had a bell curve of all your people, what we typically find is standards 95, almost everyone's actually, their bell curve peaks at 75. And so half your
Mm.
organization's below that 75 or so level. We easily find 10 to 15% productivity gains with that bottom half, just from, can you just do the job right? And then you can
Mm.
improve. And then there's other people that are already producing very, very well. but you can improve their accuracy, you can improve their sustainability. Like, great, you can go hard for 5 hours, but can you? What if you went hard for six? Like, what does that mean? Like, those
Mm.
differences are all brought in and coached. And so it's about moving the workforce up into the right in terms of productivity. Scaling the individual is really what smart access can do when you have both from the SOP, correct SOP, all the way down to skill building and observation of the work. So
Mm.
it's kind of a simple way to fix a big problem, in our opinion.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that 7 to 10% productivity boost in the first 90 days, I mean, that's pretty impactful right there. And I
Yeah,
think it's very interesting, and it's kind of telling too, to, if you give everybody the same knowledge and the same training base, right? I mean, I think it can really help improve the operation, because even, I've even seen where, one manager trains differently than the other manager, and then there's
yes,
like that creates a gap too. Even though the SOP, the document is the same both
yeah,
times, right? It's just communicated in a different way, or interpreted in a different way. So that helps to maintain that consistency as well. So now, if we look towards kind of the future, what is the future for smart access, and
yeah.
maybe how does it continue to evolve?
Well, the exciting thing that's happening when you have a system like Smart Access, it's a place where data wants to come. So it needs, let's put in time and attendance, performance, let's put in
Mm.
HRS data. None of that is required to get started. We can get you up and running, but it's just like a natural thing. It's like, this is the lever to the floor is usually for your labor, at least, is that supervisor or that leader.
Mm.
And so what's so exciting about this moment right now is that when you have that data and you have these programs and you have these supervisors, well, this is a great spot for AI because we just launched something called the Ops Navigator. And so it takes your
Okay.
or 5 to 7 key metrics that you're working. So it could be safety, compliance, like people are doing observations. It could be, um, close the gap, or like the things that you care about. All of that is funneled into a single pane of glass where you can look at it and go, okay, what are my ops managers working on? And you could see that, and it can go up and down the stack. But an example being ops manager. And so what we're doing is we're adding in agents that can do things for you as a frontline operator. So
Mm.
let's say you have 100 people on the floor, and you need to make sure that everyone is cross-skilled in a certain function.
Okay.
You could create in Smart Access, and there's agents in line. It's kind of a workflow that says, okay, here's my population, my group of people. Who's been skilled in this function? Let's just call it inbound receiving or something. So who's been skilled here? Okay, if they haven't, then assign the skill building to those people. And so then it goes out to the frontline leader. And then let me know when that's done, and you have 10 days to get it done. And then in 10
Mm.
days, the AI is going, okay, well, these 7 people are not yet there, but you got 93 people done. And so what it does is it takes that operation and that management, and it's just driven by the intelligence. Another great one, and this one we're working on right now, so it's in beta, is gap scan time. So everyone clocks in at 7. Great. You should be
Okay.
at work at 7:07. The data from the performance is 7:25. That gap
Mm.
between 25 to 7, that's a killer, right? Like, that's just a waste of money, right?
Yeah,
We
yeah.
got to close that down. So if you could tell me, and that it's in the data, and we can drive action through Smart Access, is we get to say, okay, can we just nudge all those people and those supervisors and say, you need to like close that gap. Let's go. And if we can reduce that by 10%, 20%, it saves millions of dollars. It
Mm.
increases your productivity, and it's just not wasted. So in our Ops Navigator, you're going to be able to drive the action that you want. Right now, um, it just launched, and so it's a bit in beta, being beat up by a bunch of customers and telling us how to fix it. But at scale, you're going to be able to run a bunch of campaigns or workflows that you care about, driving your main things, but things like, okay, like how do we close this gap, scan gap,
Mm.
you know, and we hear it's taking 17 minutes for people to start scanning after lunchtime. Okay, well, how do we just shrink that a little bit? And that's the great part
Yeah.
about AI. It can do the work. Otherwise, and you've probably seen this. Okay, here's an email. Everybody, we have a big scan. Yeah, issue. Please, in your morning stand-ups, please talk about it. Okay, we do. How do we know if we're actually closing the gap? And the AI can be looking at that data constantly and saying, hey, these 10 people really need help with it. And these other ones have
Mhm.
fixed the problem. And so that's what's fun about one is the Ops Navigator is going to give you the ability to do that at scale, and also just bringing AI to the front line. The job of a frontline leader is really complex because they're synthesizing all the time. They're
Yeah.
taking data from 10 to 15 different places, trying to make great decisions about getting the best out of the people that work with them. And we've heard this from many of our customers. And the biggest industry said, we don't want our frontline leaders being data scientists. It's not what we've hired them to do. We need them on the floor
Mm.
working with the folks on the floor. That's their number one goal. That's what they've been hired to do. But how many times you've been in a building, you go there and there's like 3 screens and someone's in there looking at data,
Yeah.
and there's people out on the dock doing weird stuff that they shouldn't be doing, putting labels in the wrong places and stuff like that, because they can't possibly scale those sort of relationships. And that's what Smart Access is bringing, is taking that work out of that, giving it to AI to do it, getting them on the floor. Um, so
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
we're very excited about the Ops Navigator. It's a new thing, and all of our customers now have it in the beta version. And then there's new stuff coming.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's such a really, I mean, it's really exciting because, I think it is hard to see that as an ops manager, right? I mean, you can, if you're in the area, like, oh yeah, you can see that somebody is, still at the locker area, and it's 20 minutes after shift started,
yeah,
right, or something like that. But you're not always there, right, and you don't
yeah,
always have that visibility, and depending on how many people you're managing, like it's hard to keep track of all that. So
yeah,
having that assist in being able to dial down and pinpoint that and close those gaps that you talked about is a huge win, and I can only imagine the other opportunities there are for other things like that to track too, and be able to be a better manager, and figure out how to close those different gaps and create better efficiencies too.
yeah,
So really interesting to talk to you here today, Tim, and
yeah,
learn more about Smart Access and what you're doing to
yeah.
change the game for SOPs. We'll say I love it, definitely. So if people are interested in learning more about Smart Access and seeing what they can do with it, what's the best way to do that?
Well, you can go to our website, which is smartaccess.io. You can reach out to me. Maybe on LinkedIn's a great spot to reach out to
Sure.
me. I'm just Tim Regnier on LinkedIn. You can see me there. And yeah, we have a lot of the biggest kind of the leaders in each of the industries as customers, from hard goods to grocery to 3PLs. And so in a lot of ways, we're setting the standard of how to run your frontline operation, and just excited to work with those that are willing to push on what's next. Sometimes we talk to organizations and they're not interested, and they think they got it covered with their people, but there's a new generation of young people coming up into the business, and it's
Yeah.
just like it's changing, and technology can help them be more successful. And it's such a great industry with wonderful people, and we're happy to be a part of it. But yeah, if you want to reach us, smartaccess.io, me on LinkedIn, you can email me. It's just my first initial last name at smartaccess.io too.
All right, great. And we'll definitely put all that information at thenewwarehouse.com as well as in these show notes here. So, Tim, thank you once again for your time on the show today.
Thank you for having me. This has been fun.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning into today's video here on our YouTube channel, The New Warehouse Podcast, and I appreciate you tuning in. If you liked what you saw, make sure you subscribe to our channel, and if you like this video in particular, make sure you like it as well. And if you want to get this great t-shirt that you see in the video behind me, Warehouses Are Sexy, head to warehousesAreSexy.com and get your own.